Hey, what's going on, guys? Today I'm back in my home theater. I've got my friend Brad. Brad is from out of state, brought his family down to Orlando, is one of my patrons. And while he was in preparation for the trip, he reached out and he said, Michael, I think you're not too far from where we're going to be. Is there any way I could come by and hear your setup? And I, of course, opened up my home. We've been hanging out for probably 3 or 4 hours, went out to dinner tonight. But I thought we'd just sit down because you've got a unique story. You've got a theater room at home. You've got something that I wish I had, which is a basement. But I'd love to talk through your experience here. Maybe what were some of the things that you were hoping to learn, or what did you hope to gain from this visit? So we'll talk through that. Some of the things that you shared with me earlier, I'll bring up. So Brad, just appreciate you coming and hanging out with me, man. This has been a super fun day. Tell us, what do you have at home? Like, what does your system look like?
Sure. So the system that I have, it's been pieced together over the years, much like everybody else's theaters. And so for the TV that I have, it's a old TV. It's 10, 12 years old. It's just an old plasma TV. For the sound, it's a Pioneer Elite SC95, I believe it is.
Yeah.
And
a little bit older AVR.
A little bit older. It's about 10 years old.
Yeah.
And I have Paradigm speakers all throughout the system. And
Right.
so for the front sound stage, I have left and right are 95 Fs. For the center, it's the 55C. And then for the surrounds, I have a couple in-ceiling Paradigm speakers, and then I have 4 Atmos as well. Those are Paradigm.
And then your subwoofers, SVS?
They are, yep. They're 2 PC 2000s.
Right, so that's the cylindrical ones, the tall ones. And so you've got a cool home theater. This is just a different perspective. And so I always like people just to gain, anytime you get a chance to go hear somebody else's theater, go do it. And I encourage you guys to do the same. Find somebody local, even if they're not local. You find them on Facebook and reach out to them, become friends, and say, hey man, I'm going to be up in your area. Maybe I'm willing to drive 3 hours, because you just gain a different perspective on different aspects. And so I'd love to walk through some of that. And so first off, of course, we went through a bunch of demos through Kaleidescape. I have a Kaleidescape script that allows me to hit one button, play, and it goes through 30 minutes of demos, from music to real quiet scenes to big bombastic scenes and action sequences. A lot of different dynamics, and I choose those specifically. And if you guys want a copy of that Kaleidescape script, if you have Kaleidescape, shoot me an email, youthman@obsessedhometheater.com. Be glad to share that with you. But that's the one that I love. And so let's talk through maybe some of those. What were the ones that stood out, and what stood out to you in the demos?
Sure. So I think the ones that stood out to me were some of the vocal ones.
Okay.
So there's the couple that have singers in them. And really it was just having the speakers behind the screen felt different from what I had heard before. And so where my center channel is, it's directly beneath where the TV is.
Sure.
And so it's not like it's up above or way far below. It's literally just directly below the TV.
Right.
But it still sounded completely different here, just having it come straight through the screen versus, I guess, the brain understanding that there's sound coming below where somebody's mouth actually is.
Sure. And I've shared that with you guys. There are a lot of times I hear people say that having speakers directly behind an acoustically transparent screen is a compromise. And maybe it's a compromise in the fact that, yes, sound has to come through there. You may lose some sound because it's being reflected off the fabric. But the reality is, when you go to your local cinema, where are the speakers? They're directly behind the stinking screen. Yeah. And the reason is the action is taking place on the screen. So let's put the sound where the action is. And by anchoring that dialogue to dead center, and when stuff is panning from left to right, I'm with you, man. I think that was a huge upgrade in my system when I was able to get my speakers directly behind the screen. So I think it's a cool observation. Our brains, I always knew when my center channel was above.
Yeah.
And I've heard center channels below. I think out of the two, I'd rather have it below than above. But With a TV, you just can't do that. So I love having an acoustically transparent screen. I think that's super cool. So what were some other things so that was like, we did Lady Gaga from A Star Is Born, so beautiful female vocals. And then the other one was Greatest Showman. I can't think. Never Enough, I think is the name of it. And then we did some more music, but that was kind of more bombastic with the Hans Zimmer.
Quite true, yeah. And some other things that I noticed throughout the different demos was going into this, I was anticipating the subwoofers. And so I've heard a lot about the subwoofers that you have, and just wanted to compare it to what I have at home, and that I've recently watched some different movies, and I feel like I get some of that tactile feeling from it. But I was just curious, what would it be like if it were to be bumped up into large JTR subwoofers? And so going throughout the various demos, I was expecting to be hit more with it, and that was all the way up until close to the end as we were getting into Dune. And then that was really blowing me away. But I think I just needed to reorient what my expectations were from it, because the entire experience was balanced. And if I would have been blown out of my seat, then it just wouldn't have been balanced at that point. And so I think it was just kind of recalibrating my mind a little bit, that even though there are ginormous subs in the room, that isn't necessarily going to be meaning that at all times I'm going to be vibrating around in my chair.
So to me, that all comes down to calibration and really your goals. So the JTR Captivator 4000, I'm not 4000, but the RS2s, they're sealed, there's 418s. They have way more power than what this room really can handle. So I have the gain on each one of them is about a third. And then in my trim level in the Anthem AVM 70, I've got them at -6 on like the level of them. I've always been of the opinion that you want your system to be, like you said, to be balanced. I don't want anything to distract me from what's going on in the movie. I want to be immersed in the movie. So we can turn it up more, but then the more I turn it up, the more your brain goes, oh, that subwoofer was cool. And now you're out of the movie. Versus, let's create an envelope. Let's create a bubble of space that puts you into the action or into the song or into that arena or whatever's taking place on screen. And so that's all about calibration. So if you want to crank it up, I got a buddy of mine that, gosh, he's got 18 18s in his room, and it's insane. I don't really want that. And there were parts that I actually bump it down 2 dB, not much, but I bump it down 2 dB during some, and one of them is Dune. I typically bump it down during midway, because to me, midway, there's a lot of bass, and I love bass, but again, I want it kind of equal. I want it balanced, but I don't want a flat frequency response to where the bass is equal with the treble, because our ears kind of feel like that's anemic. So I do have a house curve, so there's more bass, but yeah. So I love having 18s. We're on a concrete slab here, so I don't know. Is yours a concrete in the basement?
It is concrete as well. Yep.
So when you're on a concrete slab, it's harder to get tactile response in your seats. You said that at your house you feel it a little bit sometimes, and that's cool.
Yeah, I do. And really, I guess it depends on the scene, but one of the more recent ones, I was watching Mission Impossible 6, and there's the train scene where the train is falling off a bridge, and every single car that slams down, I was getting some tactile response in the couch that we have from that. And so there I was thinking, okay, I'm getting what you or other folks talk about when it comes to the tactile feeling. And so if I were to go to 18s, what would I actually gain? Like, am I getting more tactile? Am I going to be vibrating in my seat or what? And really what I was noticing throughout all the different demos is that, yes, I'm getting some, but there's a variety of frequency levels that are either just completely dropping off because my subs just can't hit that low, or something along those lines. And so I'm trying to remember if it was Furiosa that we were watching, and there's a tower that's falling down in it, and there's a bass drop that goes along with that. And thinking back to my own house, I get it, but going from memory at least, it seems like it drops off throughout possibly different portions of it, for sure down at the bottom end of it. And so, which kind of led to some general thoughts that I had related to just the overall balance that you have in the room, and some actionable items that I have to go back and do some recalibrating, things along those lines to try to spread or smooth that out.
Yeah, do you have like a mini DSP?
I don't.
Or I'm sorry, not a mini, like a UMic 1 to measure?
I don't, no.
Okay. So one of the things that would help is, when we're listening to our systems, if we're just listening, you notice, okay, I probably should be hearing bass there because it starts off here at this frequency and it starts going down and then it gets quiet and then it picks back up. Well, there's probably a null there. So if you were to measure the frequency response with REW, which is free, and then a UMic 1, which is like $130 or so, then you could actually physically see, oh, I've got a null here. And then you got to figure out, okay, how do I fix that null? Is it with another subwoofer to help balance that out? Is it calibration? Is it phase adjustment? Things like that. But definitely being able to measure that would kind of answer some of those questions for you.
Yeah.
But definitely, one of the reasons why I went with JTRs is that was the first time I'd ever heard like single digits. When I flew up to Wisconsin to hear Scott Newby's system, to hear Tony's system, to hear Jeff's system, I was like, okay, this is different than what I've got. I had SVS PB16s, great subwoofers, a lot of output, but about 17 hertz, they're done. That's about as low as they'll go. And in this room, I'm getting down to like really solid 8, but it's pretty close to flat, down to 5. So, and that's with room gain. It's a smaller room, so I'm getting some enhancement there from that. But having those single digits, like that's fun to me.
Totally.
But yeah, so we had some fun with some different demos. We went through, some big scenes. Tell me about you made a couple comments during our demos about the surrounds. What were you noticing with there, and then the height speakers? Because I have matching JTR Noesis 110 HT slants, so SL. And so these are a 10-inch coaxial driver, so there's a mid-range and a tweeter in there. But I have identical on the base layer, the 4 Atmos, or 4 heights. I'm getting it wrong. 4 surrounds and 4 heights. So tell me about that, because you did mention that a couple times. Like, what were you hearing? I even noticed you were looking around going, what was going through your mind during those scenes?
Sure. It started as soon as the demo started. And
with Trinov?
Trinov,
okay.
Yep. And it's the rowing scene. And just the water, hearing the paddles, and just immediately hearing it coming from the sides. I'm like, that is sound that I don't have. And it's because I don't have any side surrounds in my system. Like, that is starting to kind of fill in that overall sound bubble that folks talk about.
Yeah.
And then when it came to the Atmos, I have it at home. I can hear it, but it sounded completely different here. And so I don't know if that's solely just the types of speaker differences or calibration, room acoustics, and all those different things that are a part of it. But as I was listening to it, I was just thinking, I don't have that. And so it just left me kind of curious to be getting back home and trying to figure out, do I have it set up right? Do I need to make adjustments to the various levels?
Yeah.
But what I liked about it here is, again, it just created that full bubble where you truly could feel, or you could hear the planes passing on by, or foot stomps moving all around. And it was highly directional. You could somewhat pinpoint where different things were happening. Whereas as I think about what I have at home, it feels more general.
It's kind of somewhere up there.
Exactly. Yep. So just to have the specific sound coming from different places
Yeah.
really, to me, enhanced what the movie was trying to portray.
Sure. So probably a good illustration of that is A Quiet Place.
Certainly. Yep.
So the monster starts up, in the top, and you hear him in one speaker, and then he's creaking along up here, and now he's moving to the other side of the, the upstairs, and then he begins to come down the stairs, and so you're hearing the direction of those speakers, and that Dolby Atmos mix is moving around the object base and going to each channel, and so there is that very specific nuances that you hear. You even hear him breathing up there. It's kind of weird.
And the clock, or the timer, not the clock, but the timer, just constantly hearing that undertone of tick sound. It's like,
and that's
I don't
really
remember
soft.
hearing that before. So, but it was certainly there, and it just adds to the suspense of that overall scene.
Yeah. So one thing that I shared with you at dinner is that in your room you don't have any acoustic treatment, right?
Correct. Yep.
So one of the biggest reasons why we add acoustic treatment, and I shared with you, whether it's GIK or Acoustimac or Vicoustic or even DIY, you can save a ton of money building them yourself, is when you can stop the reflections, all the dialogue, all those nuances, they become way more clearer. And so partly maybe why you're not hearing that, either your speakers can't resolve that enough, they're not as detailed, or it could be acoustics. And so, it's hard to say, when I go into a home theater tour, sometimes people say, well, how did the Trenoff sound? What does that even mean, man? How do you know what the Trenoff...
Yep.
You're hearing the whole package. You're hearing the acoustics, you're hearing the room, you're hearing the cohesiveness of the system, the speakers, and the processing and the calibration, all that stuff. So it's hard to pinpoint one piece, but I would highly recommend getting some acoustic treatment, because if you can clap one time in your room and you hear boing, oing, 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 it's not good. So if you can start taming some of those reflections, and I intentionally, when you first came in, we were talking in the hallway, because I know the hallway's Echo City, and as I was talking, I was directing. I'm like, listen to my voice out here, and then as soon as we walk in, how did that change? And so it's a different environment. When you walk in this room, in an acoustically treated room, you're like, oh wow, I'm in a different space. It gets really quiet, and the quieter you can get it with your HVAC and all your equipment. My noise floor in here isn't real low. It's not a custom built room. This was a room that I made into a theater room. All of my equipment's up there, so you hear the fans on the Mad VR, you hear probably the Anthem, you hear the Kaleidescape, and you probably hear the wind blowing a little bit from the air. And there's a hole in the wall, so my daughter's room's right there, so you might hear her TV. So the lower you can get that noise floor, and adding those acoustic treatments, I think can really, really benefit your room and help take that to a better level and increase the clarity in the dialogue, your speakers, surround, your heights, and all of that.
Yeah, it's definitely been one of those things I've been considering doing, and I know you've mentioned it in a variety of different videos that, hey, this is one of those easy, kind of low-hanging fruit things that you can do, and for whatever reason, I've just been putting it off, but I've been thinking of moving that on up the list, and especially now since I've been in this room and just hearing the distinct difference of, like you're clapping and there's just no... I shouldn't say no, but there's almost no reflection taking into place.
It's not crazy bouncing. It you hear it reflecting and it stops.
Right.
So there's a quick decay there. So those are some things I think that are super easy, relatively inexpensive. You can build them probably $20-$30, and I mean wood's gone up since back in the day when I first started building this room out, but still way more cheaper than $110 or $120 per panel from a lot of these companies, and some of them are way higher than that. So if you can build them, you can save a ton of money on that. The other thing you had mentioned too is level matching your speakers.
Yeah.
Taking an SPL meter, making sure that all your speakers are the same volume, because then that adds to that cohesiveness. Sometimes your calibration, I found in my room that my surrounds were like 6 dB lower than my front. So if I would have left it as default, I'd been missing out.
Yeah.
I'd be hearing mostly everything here, and then like these would be inactive. And so maybe the same thing is happening with your height speakers. So checking that's definitely a good thing there too. What are some other things that just stood out? I know you and I talked about screen size. I always ask this question. You know, I'm 9 foot from a 150-inch diagonal, acoustically transparent screen. Was that too small, too big, just right? Where did that fit for your personal preference?
I think it fit just right. And thinking about my own space, I'd be sitting somewhere in about the 10, 11 feet or so from the screen. And so just kind of envisioning of what that could potentially be. I'm like, yep, that could certainly work. Yeah. I never felt like I was needing to move my head around to view things. I never got dizzy or anything like that. And so as I've just been at home taking painter's tape and putting it around the wall and just trying to visualize what could this potentially look like. I'm going to try to go as wide as I possibly can because I've had no issues with the screen that you have.
Yeah. And again, if you can build it, it's going to be cheaper. Of course, you buy one already made, it's going to cost you a lot more. This is a DIY screen. I've got Seymour Center Stage XD fabric. There's some great companies out there that'll sell you the fabric if you're kind of handy and you're willing to put some effort into it. If you don't, there's plenty of companies out there you can just buy the screen. You'll just pay for it for them to be able to manufacture and kind of build that together. Trying to think, what else? Any other thoughts? Any questions? Even for me, as you're in your journey, you're still figuring out what you want. You know, you've got a 10-year-old AVR. Do you upgrade that? You're asking a lot of questions about the Anthem and different processors and AVRs that I've had over the years. But any thoughts or questions, even for me?
Yeah, totally. As you're talking about the different processors, one of the main questions I had was around my receiver being 10 years old, and it processes 4K, it processes Atmos, all those different things. And so I got it back at the day figuring, all right, I can kind of grow into it as I'm piecing different things together. But then when I'm in here and I'm specifically hearing different things coming from different areas, it just sounds completely different. And again, maybe that's just speaker differences and you actually spending the time to properly calibrate everything and all the acoustic treatments that are in this room. But it still just left me wondering, like, is it that, or is it just simply the piece of equipment that I have is starting to show its age? Maybe the piece of equipment is the calibration that it has isn't as robust possibly as other ones that are out there. Because I know you and I were also talking about the options that you have of going into Anthem's different alignments and able to make various different adjustments. And I think back to mine, I'm like, I don't have anything like that. I can do some really basic speaker levels, but going into that level of tweaking, I just don't think I have. And so that's really where the question was kind of at of, is it equipment or something else?
Yeah. And again, I still would go back to, my first recommendation, get your acoustic treatment. I think you can improve the performance of what you have by starting there. That's a given. Recalibrate that, of course, after you do that. Then from there, figure out, okay, what do I feel like I'm missing? And then you have to go down the road of, okay, is it my AVR? Is it my speakers? Maybe your speakers just aren't, up to par of what you're looking for. It may be the brand. Some brands are very laid back. Some brands are very forward in their sound. Some are very detailed. Some are bright. So you have to figure out what your ears like the best. And of course, what your budget can allow. But then the other thing is just figuring out, like, what are the tweaks? Level matching. That's something pretty much free. $20, you can get an SPL meter. And then taking some measurements with REW, seeing what your speakers and your subwoofers are doing. So there's a lot of things that you can do without dumping a ton of money into, I just got a crappy system and I need to start over. No, start with what you have, begin to build on it, and just figure out, like, what are your goals and figure out, all right, what are my steps? And you and I had talked about, your next step, if you were to wanting to improve your subwoofer, to get more tactile, you might start off with one really good subwoofer. Then down the road, as funds become available, you buy another one.
Totally. Yep.
And so that's part of the journey. Most of us can't just write a check and go, okay, here's my whole theater. I know I can't.
Nope.
This has been an 18-year process in this home. And then even before that, probably another 10 years with a Polk audio system and Velodyne subwoofers, way before I even started with this room. And so it's just a journey. It's over time, and just figuring out what your goals are and doing the best with what you have, but then figuring out, okay, what are some things that I can do to improve that?
Right.
The other thing I would, and maybe we can even talk off camera on this, is, I don't know the sensitivity of the Paradigm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say Parasound, that's an amplifier. Paradigm speakers, if they're inefficient, so if they've got like a sensitivity in the low 90s or even in the 80s, your AVR may just literally be running out of gas.
True.
And so adding an amplifier would allow them to come alive more. So we can even talk about that. So that might be something that is kind of throttling your system and holding it back. So, but yeah, this has been, like I said, I love having people over. I love getting to know people and hearing your story, your journey, and just giving you a new perspective of another theater. I don't think I have the best theater in the world. Sometimes I honestly believe that mine is the least dialed in, least calibrated, just because just literally a couple days ago, I had the Marantz Cinema 30 and some Outlaw audio, some OSD audio amplifiers. So I pulled them out and I'm putting mine back in. Probably I was waiting till after your demo. Now that's coming out, the Anthem's coming out, and I'm putting in the Trenov, and so I'm going to be playing with the Trenov, and so my system's always in a hot mess, and so that's a big reason why we're building the Obsessed Home Theater lab, so I don't have to destroy and tear apart my room all the time. But this is just fun to me, man. It's fun chasing cool products. It's fun giving demos. It's fun building relationships and friendships. That's probably the biggest thing that my channel has afforded me over the past 7 years is the friendships and relationships with patrons, with people I run into at shows, vendors and these brands. And it's just been super cool, man, to build those relationships and to, do my best to contribute to the home theater community through educational videos, through sharing stories like yours, and experiences on different products without just always relying on me to say, hey, here's what I believe about JTR or Kaleidescape or Valencia or whatever I've used it in my theater. I want to give people opportunity to share that experience. And honestly, if Brad came today and he said, Michael, your theater is okay, I would 100% post that video. You're not going to offend me. If you said, man, honestly, your speakers suck, or man, that projector is just dim, or it's not good, I'm okay with that because I didn't build my theater to impress you. I didn't build my theater to impress you. I built my theater so that me and my family and my friends and my guests could come, hang out, chill, listen to music, watch movies, and just have a good time together.
Totally.
So I'm excited for you and your journey. Definitely let me know the progress of what you find out. When you add the acoustic treatment, what did that do? When you get your DIY screen or whatever, send me some pictures of that, man. I want to follow your journey. I'm excited for that. So
yeah, as am I. So yeah, I'll definitely be sharing that with you. And like I said, I'm excited just to get home too and try to do some more of that level setting and see what kind of impact does that have. Because for all I know, some of my Atmos might just be really quiet or something along those lines, and I just need to make some different tweaks. But really just curious to start tinkering around.
Yeah. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I've got lots of products that are coming in for review. I've got the Trenov Altitude 16. I have an Onkyo RZ30 that's on its way. I've got 2 remotes over there that I've got to get reviewed. Let's see, what else? I've got a Sony Bravia 9 TV, 85-inch, that I've got to review. I've got to, Sony just sent me their Bravia Theater, I think it's called the Theater Quattro. Clips just sending me their the 7s. It's a special edition. So lots of stuff coming in the works, lots of reviews. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. And of course, we've got lots of stuff going on with Obsessed Home Theater, our lab. We're building a room so that I can test this stuff without having to take apart my own theater. So I'm super pumped about that, and I'm sharing that journey with you guys on the channel. So Brad, once again, man, thanks so much for stopping by. It's been a pleasure. So guys, hope you have an incredible week. God bless. I'll catch you in the next video.